As the spirit wanes, the form appears. This is an account of several trips with inhalants. Philosophical babble. I took my philosophy degree at the university with the theme Creativity and Language. At the time I was finished, I was convinced that creativity appears as a shift of a form or an image from one common use in a language system to a new one, and the process is not logical, as being capable to describe all the steps, but appears as a sudden jump. That jump is a synthesis not made consciously. For example, I took a bath and I watch as the water flows on my watch. I suddenly come up with the new idea to draw a liquid watch. I've read Jung's works on archetypes and decided that the best way to find out if archetypes existed and had something to do with creativity is to try to experience them. The obvious choices were hallucinogens. I decided to use acetone after I've read an article about it. First trip. There I was sitting with a tub of glue and a plastic bag. All my work had never prepared me of what I was about to experience. After several huffs, the sound started to repeat in a loop. And there it was, arisen from deep inside of me, an ancient being, and I looked at the world around, took a deep breath, and laughed. It was happy to live again. In Jung's concepts, this would seem to be the shadow. It is important to make the notice that at the time, I have not read the Jung publications about the various archetypes, only a general account of what an archetypical image is. I, on the other hand, was afraid that I was caught in an endless helix. But the shadow said, "No problem, we are in a loop universe. No worry. Here you'll meet yourself and leave yourself." And it started talking to me how different types of drugs catch people in different persons, the persona. The trip was over in 15 minutes. Second trip. Next day I decided to continue. The shadow again welcomed me. It was more clear in image this time. It had a nice sense of humor, the trickster or the fool. It resembled at the same time a fool or a very organized man. It was not within me, but as a different persona. As the trip was getting to its end, all the hallucinations centralized as an upside-down echo that returns to its center or maker. The trip was 30 minutes. Third trip. This was more extreme. I was listening to Björk at the time. The shadow showed me an empress or a goddess, the anima. I've read the chapter on the anima, but it concerned mostly females, so again it appeared by itself, not from what I've read. Of course, the song of Björk was the raw material with which the image developed. The goddess is very fair and cruel. Anyone who tries to marry or kiss her dies. Only a magician can trick her, said the shadow. I am a magician, said I. Oh, you fancy yourself a trickster. Can you reach me? Can you kiss me? Echoes the voice of the goddess from above. Yes, I can, said I. Then two ghosts appeared, red and blue. They manifest in reality only with an automatic gesture or a phrase. They are at war with each other, wins by whoever manages to express himself the most in the world, said the shadow. The empress said, there are different levels of being. A simple phrase repeated is one, a gesture another, much like a human being, but it lives in the lives of others without considering consequences. The flesh is a thought put into a fact. A thought passes within and through flesh to become a fact. It's both the lowest and the highest. A free thought is such that needs no flesh to appear, said both the queen and the fool as a choir. With their words I saw colors, abstract shapes, and geometric forms. The biggest pain is to live with consequences, was the final echo from the drug. This trip was 40 minutes long. Before the fourth trip, I discovered the formal resemblance between hallucinations and mythology and fairy tales. I decided to use some method of magic to concentrate myself within the trip. I read extensively through different mythological texts. I had an important dream. Horus appeared as a number, both 3 and 4. Again, I read about the mythological meaning of the numbers afterwards. At the time I awoke, the only thing I could put up was that they equal 7. The fourth trip. I sit on my knees and try to focus. I'm like Alice in Wonderland changing size. The shadow appears and shifts to a monk who will teach me now. He shows me an image of a flower on the flower. "This is the most important thing," said he. Afterwards, I read about Mandela and how it corresponds to the blossoming flower of the rose. This trip was 40 minutes. Fifth and last trip. The goddess and the shadow present me in a grand golden amphitheater. There are all the gods from all the grades and levels of being. "You have been chosen to be an emperor," said a golden figure. Old man sitting in a throne. The old man. "I can't. Look at me. I'm nobody," said I. "Stop acting as a spoiled child. You have been chosen. You've passed all the tests." A choir of all beings echoes. The trip lasted 2 hours. At that point, I was afraid of the megalomaniac structure of the hallucinations and stopped experimenting. Conclusion. The archetypical origin of the hallucinations was quite obvious, but there were a lot more than a display of old mythological figures. The way different ideas were presented with shapes and colors was a proof of my concept about creativity. At last, there was one thing which lies beyond my logical means of explaining. These experiences changed my conscious perception of the world and myself. The only way to describe them now is a synthesis between spiritual and rational thoughts, in the broadest possible meaning of these two words.